everyone. Thank you so much for joining. So this is actually our first TalentNet Direct Sourcing Decoded webinar of the year. And today our topic is going to be the evolution of a direct sourcing program. We'll go through some quick introductions before we dive in. So for those of you on the call who aren't familiar with us, so we are the customer success team at TalentNet. Our role is to really guide and support our clients and our partners through every facet of direct sourcing. So from inception to post-launch success, we're here to kind of advise on operational strategies, bring proven best practices, and then technology enablement as well, so that our clients can get the most out of their direct sourcing programs. My name is Anne Llewellyn. I'm the Director of Customer Success at TalentNet. I've been with TalentNet for 10 years and I've been in every role within direct sourcing. I started off as a recruiter or a curator, worked up through delivery lead at an MSP program management role, and then now back on the technology side, I oversee customer success. I'm going to pass it off to Matt next for his intro.
Thanks, Anne. I'm Matt Redling. I'm a customer success executive here at TalentNet. I've been in this role for just over 2 years now. My background is about 15 years in the staffing industry, covering everything from recruitment to account management, and also some strategic advisory functions as well. And I'll pass over to you, Sathi.
Thanks, Matt. Hi, everyone. My name is Sathi, and I'm an account executive here at TalentNet. I've had the pleasure of being part of the TalentNet team for just over 2 years, just like Matt. But my journey within the staffing world spans over about 15 years, primarily in the VMS and MSP space. Throughout my career, I focused on supporting large-scale enterprise clients, managing complex portfolios globally. And today, we're really excited to have you join us for our webinar. It's going to be a really great session with really valuable insights. So with that, I'll pass it back over to Anne to kick things off.
Awesome. All right, so some general housekeeping before we get started. If you have a question at any point in time, unfortunately with the webinar, it can't be fully interactive, but please drop your questions in the Q&A box. We do have some time set aside at the end to answer the questions we get throughout the session today. If we end up not having time to address your question, we do still have it on record, so we'll follow up with you after the event and have that discussion one-on-one. We're also going to have a few polls pop out throughout the session, kind of related to the different topic areas that we're going to be covering. We'd love to get some of your thoughts and some of your insights, so when you see those pop up, please answer them. We'd appreciate that. And then finally, we are going to be recording today's event, and then afterwards we will be circulating it out. So if there's anyone who couldn't make it or any maybe of your team members, you'll have that recording unavailable for yourselves as well if you want to reference back to anything that we've talked about today. All right, and I'll give a few quick words about TalentNet. So founded in 2013, we're a direct sourcing technology and services company. We're focused on helping companies attract, engage, and curate top talent using their own brand. So we provide the technology platform, but we also provide strategic program guidance that powers leading direct source programs, from early pilot programs to we have many successful global initiatives. Innovation is really at the core of what we do. So that's kind of really one of our core pillars within TalentNet. We're continuously evolving to reflect the shifting dynamics in the talent market, as well as the real world needs of our clients. All right, so I've already said direct sourcing quite a bit. That's going to be one of our main topics for the day. But for those of you who this may be new to, I want to quickly talk about what exactly is direct sourcing? So your company's brand, it already has value in the talent market. And direct sourcing is what really allows you to leverage that equity that your brand has and attract those candidates who are already familiar with you and interested in your organization. And instead of having to rely solely on third-party staffing firms, especially in contingent labor, direct sourcing allows you to bring your own talent in and have that talent in your own branded space. So a private talent community that reflects your company's voice, your company's culture, your company's value. And that branded talent community becomes a long-term asset because you're not just, filling a role as you get it, but you're able to build and cultivate this pipeline of qualified, engaged candidates for future needs in that talent community that you own. So huge benefit to direct sourcing. Of course, it's going to be our main topic for today. All right, so as I mentioned today, we're going to be talking about we've talked about what is direct sourcing, but we're going to be focusing on the evolution of a direct sourcing program. Because direct sourcing success, it's not something that just happens overnight, and it's not a straight line. Programs really evolve over time, and they go through very distinct phases as they mature. This is something that we've seen again and again across the clients and the partners we work with. So that's kind of led us to develop this framework that we're calling crawl, walk, run to help guide our clients through that evolution. So again, this wasn't something that we created in a vacuum. This came from years of us working really closely with our clients across many industries, and it kind of led us to start to spot patterns in what makes a program take off. And also, just as importantly to that, what could potentially cause it to stall out? And this is very similar to the best practices, which I know some of you are familiar with, that we advocate for today. Again, this framework came from us kind of being in the trenches with our programs, kind of testing different things, refining things, and really learning what works best at each stage of a program's life cycle. So this is really kind of grounded in reality. It's not just theory. So each phase here, crawl, walk, and run, what it really represents is a shift in what the program needs. So crawl is all about laying the foundation, aligning stakeholders, educating hiring managers, launching the program, launching the first roles, proving early value. Walk is, when you really start to scale, but also where some cracks can appear if workflows or curation or communication maybe aren't quite aligned. And then run is, when the program is fully optimized, where you're really starting to see results and it's functioning as a strategic asset to the business. And one of the biggest reasons why we use this model is because programs really can, and they often do get stuck. And sometimes because they're still operating like they're in the crawl phase, even though they may have grown beyond that. And then the alternative is that sometimes they've tried to jump straight into the run phase without having some of those core fundamentals in place. So that's really why this framework is so valuable, not just to describe, where your program currently is, but to help you diagnose some of the challenges that you may be facing, and then what you need to focus on to get your program to the right next step. So today, our team, or each of us, we're going to be walking you through each of these phases. We're going to be talking in detail about what each one looks like, what typically works, what doesn't, share some stories and lessons learned from helping our programs and our clients grow through these phases. And then by the end of today, we hope you walk away with a clearer sense, if you have a program, where your program currently is, what it needs to evolve and thrive. And then if you're maybe thinking about implementing a direct source program, you'll walk away with an understanding of what you need to focus on for the different phases as your program matures. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Matt, and he is going to walk us through our first phase.
Thanks, Anne. So the first phase is going to be the crawl phase, and we've titled this Getting Started with Intention. And so the crawl phase is where programs have just launched and are getting ready and starting to settle into their workflows and their processes. This particular stage is important because it begins to set the foundation for future success. It's important to make sure that these workflows and these processes are functioning as expected, and will be able to support the future growth of the program as you go through the walk and run phases later on. So I'll start by talking about some of the key stages of the call phase, and then I'll focus on some key activities as well. So the first stage would be the initial setup. This portion is typically addressed during the readiness and the implementation phases of your direct sourcing program. And this includes everything from the establishment of workflows, processes, and getting to know the tools that are going to be at your disposal. Another stage is going to be a learning and adaptation phase. And this is going to be where teams are starting to learn and adapt to these new processes that have been in place. And it often represents an opportunity for refinement and optimization. The next stage would be stakeholder engagement. And this is where you're going to be looking to foster active engagement with the stakeholders in order to gather feedback and make the necessary adjustments early on. And then finally, you're going to want to look to focus on quick wins. Identifying and achieving quick wins helps to build momentum and demonstrate early success. And so now we'll talk a little bit about some of the key activities during this crawl phase. In the crawl phase, it's important to conduct a thorough analysis to identify any gaps or pain points that exist within the process of your direct sourcing program. And this will involve gathering that feedback from stakeholders, reviewing past performance data, and understanding where inefficiencies or challenges might exist. And by finding these areas early on, you'll be able to develop targeted strategies in order to address them to support the long-term growth of your direct sourcing program. While you're doing that, you're also going to be looking to establish goals and determine what your success metrics are going to be. And so setting clear goals and success metrics is going to be vital to measuring the program's progress and ensuring alignment with overall business objectives. Examples of this might include reducing things like time to fill to a specific threshold, for example, maintaining a certain percentage to max bill rate in order to help achieve targeted cost saving numbers, or growing the talent community by a certain rate month over month. Our third area of focus is going to be the change management element. So implementing a direct sourcing program often leads to changes in processes and mindsets within your organization. Effective change management will involve clear communication about why the direct sourcing program was implemented and how it will benefit your company overall. And so providing training sessions, resources, and the ongoing support necessary to help with this transition is going to be important through this crawl phase. Next, we'll talk about program adoption. And so early adoption among key stakeholders like hiring managers is a great way to capitalize on the momentum that's built prior to the launch of your direct sourcing program. This can be done through regular updates on program performance, sharing success stories, and demonstrating the tangible benefits of the direct sourcing program. It's really important to create a culture of collaboration and openness where feedback is welcomed, but also acted upon. And then finally, we have the community growth element. During the crawl phase, you're going to be looking to build your talent community quickly, but also with quality candidates. And so building a strong community around your direct sourcing program is going to be essential for its long-term success. This will involve creating networks of engaged candidates, hiring managers, and other stakeholders who are invested in that program's success. The regular communication, events, and opportunities for networking can help strengthen these relationships and ensure the ongoing support and growth of your program. So next, I'll talk about some of the key aspects of this initial crawl phase. So when you're getting started, the crawl phase involves setting up the basic elements of your direct sourcing program, like how things will work and the tools you're going to be using. Again, you'll want to be focusing on learning and adjusting during this phase as well. So teams will be getting used to the new way of doing things. There might be some minor issues that you have to work through, but you're also going to be learning a lot we'll be learning a lot through this process as well. You'll want to work together. It's important to actively involve everyone involved in direct sourcing and everyone who will benefit from the direct sourcing program to get their input and make some necessary tweaks early on. And then finally, we'll want to focus on those early successes. So aiming and achieving some quick positive results will help build enthusiasm for the program and show that value early on, which will help propel you to the next phase, which is going to be the walk phase. And so here are some ways that you can identify that you are ready to move on to that next walk phase. So you'll be looking at improving how things work. So based on how you learn about your processes during the crawl phase, you want to focus on making your processes more efficient. You'll want to plan for growth as well. So start thinking about how the program can handle more activity and more complex hiring strategies in the future. You'll want to develop more detailed ways to track success and find areas that need improvement. And you want to create a culture where feedback is encouraged and processes are being continuously refined. And so the crawl phase is really all about laying that solid foundation for your direct sourcing program. And when you get started with intention, you will set your program up for success early on and be able to translate that into sustained success long term as well. And so one of my pro tips for the crawl phase in particular is we hear a lot about how people will set certain KPIs at the outset of the program, things like submissions to hire, interview ratios, et cetera. But I would really encourage people to consider things that are more long-term, like OKRs, to be able to have a North Star that they're working towards long-term. Examples of these OKRs could be something as simple as optimizing your supplier base. We've encountered a lot of programs and a lot of clients where they have a very broad supplier base, where there's a select few that are very high performers, and then there's a majority of which who don't perform as expected or as intended. And so if an OKR could be to take a look at that supplier base and eventually make refinements and optimize it to suit your business's needs. Oftentimes direct sourcing will be able to support you with that. All right, and so with that, I'll pass over to Anne to talk a little bit more about the walk phase.
Great, thank you, Matt. All right, so the walk phase. This is when you're going to see your program really start to gain momentum. So you're no longer just, standing things up, figuring things out. You're really starting to hit your stride within your program. And your baseline processes being established and kind of start to become optimized. This is really the entry point for this phase. And then the next kind of focus would be process optimization. So some of those early lessons from your crawl phase, this is when they start to be put into action. So you've identified what worked, you've identified what didn't, and now you're building that into your operations. So things like intake flows become clearer, curation workflows are smoother, your communication rhythms with hiring managers and partners are starting to become more consistent. And all of that really starts to reduce friction in the process, and you start to notice things like a reduction in time to fill. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm just having a slight technical difficulty here. All right, so again, all of that friction in the process, you start to see that go away, things start to become more efficient, and you can start to focus on optimizing some of those things. Actually, this is a really good example of best practices that you maybe have put in place at the start of your program. You can start to take a look at those and optimize those. So I'll give exclusivity as an example. That's one of our best practices. A lot of programs will, let's say, launch at first when they're in the crawl phase with a 24-hour exclusivity window for their direct source program. The walk phase is a good point in time to maybe look to extend that to maybe something like 48 hours as an example. And this can be done with other best practices as well. You've laid that foundation in that crawl phase, and then now you're trying to build upon that in the walk phase. So again, things become more reliable. The program really starts to function and run like a well-oiled machine. You'll see, not only friction start to go away, but you'll see, other areas like, apologies, sorry, I'm having some technical issues here, but hopefully that was the last one. But again, you'll see fulfillment rates and other things start to improve. You'll see time to fill start to improve. You'll see hiring managers begin to trust the direct sourcing channel as a dependable way to find their talent quickly. So confidence builds within the company, within the organization, and then that confidence starts to become fuel for continued growth. The program starts to become a redeployment engine. So your direct source program is, using your brand to attract talent. People who have worked at the company before are a very large piece of that. So as your community grows, your formers, your known talent starts to grow as well. And you have that ability to, so rather than, each time a role comes out, starting from scratch with every job, you now have this asset of former talent, known workers that you can proactively re-engage. People who already know your brand, who have already delivered results, huge asset to the business. And it's a win-win for candidates as well, because they really get a smoother, more personalized experience. And this also lowers your overall sourcing costs and is quicker. So it's a huge benefit as well. You'll start to also see, so internal adoption is going to start to grow. You'll start to see that internal momentum. The program will start to gain visibility within the organization. So hiring leaders, hiring managers will start to hear about it, take notice, word and mouth. One manager had a really successful, quick experience with the program, recommends it to others. It starts to be seen as, maybe it started out as an alternative sourcing model, that it starts to become the go-to for either specific roles, specific skill sets, or entire departments. Stakeholders start coming to you, to the program, wanting to tap into that channel that they've seen be successful in other areas of the business. And this is kind of nearing the end, and how you're nearing the end of the walk phase and kind of getting ready to move into that next phase is the talent community starts to be able to provide insights that can drive strategy. So your program starts delivering more than just talent. It starts to deliver insight, because you think about it, you have this very large talent community in most cases. You can start to collect really valuable data on that. Things like talent availability, engagement trends, different kind of skill sets that you might be attracting, or different trends in locations, or even rates based on locations. And this data can really start to inform larger conversations around workforce planning. So budgeting, strategic resourcing. This is when direct sourcing can actually start to move towards influencing business decisions rather than just filling jobs. And then, so the pro tip for this section is to I think this is often a section that some programs can get stuck in, because you're already starting off focusing on optimization, but sometimes they miss that step into the next phase, which is using that information you have and using that success that your program has brought to drive those insights back and start to really measure and demonstrate business impact. So that's my pro tip for this section, is to make sure that as you're moving through this stage, your mindset is shifting along with that as well. Moving from, okay, how do I make this more efficient? How can I really optimize this? And then move towards, how can I show this value that we've had, success that we've had, and move that success into other areas of the business. And with that, I will pass it over to Sati for our next phase.
Thanks so much, Anne. All right, well, that brings us to our final stage. And the final stage of the direct sourcing evolution is what we call the run stage. At this point, the program isn't just standing on its own. It's really truly leading the pack. So you've gone from testing to mastering, and now you're running with confidence, purpose, and agility. At this point, within the organization, it has already established processes, tools, and partnerships that really enable the direct source program to operate smoothly and predictably. Here we have the key stakeholders aligned, internal teams are trained, and your talent pipeline is consistently delivering results. You're no longer just experimenting in this phase as you did in maybe the crawl or walk phase. You're truly optimizing and innovating as you grow. So moving into this stage, expanding the scope of the direct source program becomes more strategic. This means your direct source program is no longer siloed to contingent hiring for a single team. Essentially what started out as a pilot program in one department has now scaled confidently across new lines of business and other roles. So for example, if the direct source program was initially focused on tech contractors, we're now viewing what that looks like and now widening the DS lane. So we're looking at incorporating marketing, engineering, operations, and other LOBs into the direct source program. So we can see the DS successes in these areas of business as well. So again, expansion not only really improves talent access, but also creates consistent experiences across the business. Again, this is important when making workforce planning more streamlined and overall more impactful. So once the scope is established and you're running on all cylinders, now the program can really focus its shift and model. It expands across global geographies. So direct sourcing really evolves from a department level initiative to an enterprise-wide strategy. This shift requires intentional planning and stakeholder alignment. But this is where you can apply the lessons you've learned along the way in the pilot program. So you've gone through all of the growing pains, you know exactly what to expect to scale your direct source program, and you're well on your way to growing as expected. So when clients extend into direct sourcing, extend direct sourcing into other regions or new regions, they often discover cultural or regulatory nuances they hadn't really considered before. But the upside to this really is with proper planning, you can now build a more globally aligned talent strategy. You can unify your brand presence and even uncover new pools of high quality talent. And as we move on, as your internal candidate community grows and your recruiters become more efficient and more advanced using sourcing tools and AI, you reduce the need to really rely on those expensive external suppliers for every single rec, right? You evaluate suppliers based on performance, cost, and alignment to your hiring strategy. You now really want to just retain only those who deliver niche or hard to source talent. This really adds value beyond what your direct sourcing engine already provides. As I mentioned, you now have the analytics on what your direct source program can fill and what is considered niche. So, you can now align your suppliers to the roles they are specifically good at. You can utilize the direct sourcing program primarily for your redeployment and scaling initiatives, while your other suppliers can focus on what they excel at. So while every client optimizes their supplier mix and role distribution differently, one of the most consistent and measurable outcomes across our programs have been cost efficiency. So direct sourcing often operates at around 80% of the max bill rate. And when we compare that to traditional channels, possibly up to even 100%, this results in significant cost savings or cost avoidance for programs leveraging this strategy. At this point, this really isn't about cutting ties, it's about really shifting the focus. So at this stage, clients begin to assess their supplier base through a new lens. You want to really look at who adds unique value, who excels at niche sourcing, and who might unfortunately be redundant. With that clarity, you're able to prioritize your best partners and refocus direct sourcing on areas where it delivers the most impact. And again, as we mature into the run phase, project-based hiring is no longer seen as an exception or a workaround. At this stage, it becomes more of a planned, trackable part of your talent strategy. So, to get true and real value, you need to be more, you need to look at this more than just a sourcing channel. You need to create a feedback loop, right? So this starts with creating a structured intake process for project work with standardized scoping, project visibility, and clear, transparent requirements. So if you look deeper into every project engagement, we want to find out truly, what skills were sourced, how fast those roles were filled, how did the talent actually perform, and were the business outcomes actually met? By capturing this data, you feed into that loop and it gets smarter over time. High performing freelancers or consultants can now be flagged for redeployment. Delays or gaps in delivery can be traced back to sourcing constraints or misaligned requirements. Focusing on analytics from project-based hiring can help identify emerging skills, shift budget forecasts, and even influence how you structure your full-time roles. Over time, the project demands and its patterns can become predictive signals for future workforce needs. So that's how direct sourcing really moves from a reactive program to more of a strategic program. So it really responds with precision in that real time. So by strategically leveraging project-based hiring, an example here is we have one client who unlocked over $750,000 in measurable savings without having to sacrifice talent quality or delivery timelines. So this approach allows businesses to really tap into flexible, pre-qualified talent pools for defined scopes of work. So again, you're avoiding costly markups and inefficiencies, which can technically sometimes be hidden in traditional SOW engagements. Here's where you really want to gain cost control, transparency, and agility, or so you gain agility in responding to these needs in real time. All right, and then with that, with all of that in place, the next big shift is the biggest one of all, right? Instead of having separate entry points for different types of talent, where we have contractors here, freelancers there, full-time employee somewhere else, direct sourcing creates a one doorway. So you streamline access by centralizing your intake process. Whether someone is applying for a permanent role or they're looking for a contract role, they enter through the same branded experience, which essentially is a single unified channel to access all talent, regardless of their worker classification. This creates, a simpler, smarter access point and delivers a seamless candidate experience. Candidates experience a one brand, a one system, a one relationship, which is super important, right? Internally, this means, consolidated data, better engagement metrics, and faster redeployment. And externally, it builds loyalty and strengthens your employer brand. At this point, your direct source program is really embedded into your talent planning conversations. Hiring managers are now thinking direct sourcing first. Brand, marketing, and talent acquisition, they all collaborate to ensure that the candidate experience aligns with your long-term goals and reputation, right? Direct sourcing, essentially at this point has graduated from a pilot to a pillar, and it's now driving real value across the business as a whole. This means that, it's creating measurable impact. We have lower cost per hire, shorter time to fill, higher candidate satisfaction, and overall better talent quality. To sum it up, this is what running truly looks like. You're scalable, you're cost effective, you're data smart, and you're fully integrated. At this point, your program can, truly flex up or down based on demand. Costs are under control, which is super important. And decisions are driven by insights rather than just guessing or hunches. Your direct source program plugs into HR, it plugs into procurement and business systems seamlessly as well. With a strong direct sourcing foundation, you're really able to attract, engage, and deploy talent faster than the competitors. And that's really what it's all about, right? While maintaining quality and consistency at scale. And keeping on trend or keeping up with our run theme, you're really not, you're not just filling roles, you're winning the race against talent. So with that, I'll go on to my pro tip. And so here, as you hit your stride in the run phase, the key is to scale with intention. You really want to amplify your success by applying what works to new business lines, to new geographies, or even full-time roles. You don't want to be limited only by the initial scope set by the direct source program in its infancy. So here you want to use the intelligence that you've learned along the way to optimize your supply base, to make the one doorway experience the front door for every talent or every type of talent, and create a one trusted access point for your talent, and it becomes direct sourcing becomes a true talent asset that's ready to be redeployed. And then, so with that, I will pass it back over to Kelly for Q&A.
Cool. Hello, everyone. My name is Kelly Bird. I'm the marketing director here at TalentNet. And we've got a lot of questions coming through as the session went on, and I encourage you to continue to drop your questions in the Q&A section. We will try to address as many of your questions today, and if we are unable to answer them, we'll follow up with you directly post session. So to kick things off for our Q&A, first question is to you, Anne. What is your number one direct source best practice to implement during the walk stage?
That is a great question. I think that the walk phase isn't necessarily about implementing new best practices, but it's taking a look at the best practices that you have in place, that you put in place when you launched your program, and evaluating how maybe you can expand on them. So I think I used that example of exclusivity. I really like that one, and that's a common one that we see get optimized during this phase. So, again, let's say that you've started the program with a 24-hour exclusivity period for direct sourcing. You've seen the program deliver on that, be able to deliver on that. You might look to extend it to 48 hours, knowing that you have that confidence in their delivery ability and that you won't have to sacrifice time to fill or hiring manager satisfaction. So again, not necessarily implementing new. Maybe you could if you didn't choose to implement one at the start, but it's more about reviewing those decisions that you've made and seeing if there's areas that they can be enhanced during this phase.
Okay, thanks, Anne. And the next question we're going to go to that came in live is to you, Matt. When do you know when you're ready to move from crawl to walk?
So when you're looking at that particular transition, I think something to remember is it's important to have a certain volume of success or a certain volume of activity in the program. And so what you'll commonly see at the initial launch of a direct sourcing program is you'll have certain roles that are considered in scope, and perhaps what you'll have is a subset of those roles which might be given exclusivity, to kind of leverage Anne's example. And so what you're looking to do is you're trying to establish or show that your curation team is consistently hitting KPIs against those exclusive type roles. So things like, number of submissions, your interviews, placements, all of that stuff. And then you're also looking to kind of establish a solid track record of quality and speed as well against those exclusive roles. And when you start to have the experience, the expertise, and the track record against those exclusive type roles, now you can start expanding to the rest of the in-scope positions in order to demonstrate that scalability. And I think as you're going through that particular process, once you're demonstrating the ability to scale, that's when you're starting to identify that you're ready to move on to that walk phase.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Matt. Another question for you, Anne. How do you know when you're ready to move out of the walk stage and move on to the run stage?
I think that noting the difference between that focus on improvement, on optimization, and starting to recognize that, this is really running smoothly, and then shifting towards how am I extracting really valuable insights from this, and how is that helping my larger strategy? That I feel like is the point when you start to notice that mindset, shift. That's the clue that you're ready to move on. It's not just, okay, I need to make this better. This area could be more smooth. It's like, I'm really, really feeling solid about the foundation, the way that this is going, and I'm starting to use this information to see the business impact and show that business impact.
Perfect. Really interesting question for you, Sathi. We're considering expanding to the UK, but we're not sure if we should go to RFP for a new curator or stick with the one we have now.
Well, this is a really great question. We definitely have a lot of experience expanding into the UK, but there are definitely a few really important things to consider when selecting your curation team. especially in the UK. So there's pros and cons, but we'll talk about what you need to do specifically when you want to stick with your curator first. So here you want to really understand if they have a proven global delivery record. Can they operate compliantly within the UK? There's a lot of guidelines, regarding GDPR and other governance processes. Can your current program deliver strong or currently deliver strong performance? Are they great with their speed, their cost, their candidate quality? Can they scale quickly is another decision, that needs to be considered. And another point here is, can they offer data continuity? Can they extend the reporting in the UK seamlessly? So those are a lot of really things to consider when sticking with your current curator. But on the other hand, if we want to consider going to RFP or looking at a curator outside of your current base, you need to figure out whether or not the UK business has either unique needs or hiring models or expectations. Another point here is, can they are they, again, compliant? Can they understand readiness? Do they have deep in-country experience or relationships? Does the stakeholders want local ownership or more regional specialization? So I'll close this off by basically saying there's a lot to consider here, but you really want to start off with the capacity or the current capability of your current curator. Do a review of that and kind of look at what that looks like in terms of an overall assessment. So can they deliver in the market? Do they have a UK compliance framework? And can they replicate a successful direct source program or create a one doorway experience in a new region? If the answer is yes, go ahead with your current curator. If the answer is no, then go to RFP.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So we're going to wrap up our session for today. As always, you will be getting a copy of today's recording shortly after we end this session. And I want to pass over to Anne just to share her final thoughts and final word and final piece of advice for today.
Thank you, Kelly. So thank you all for spending time with us today. We've really enjoyed walking you through the evolution of our direct source program and sharing what we've learned from supporting our clients, our programs at every stage. If there is one key message to leave you with, it's that successful programs don't happen just by chance. They're really built intentionally in phases. They need the right strategy, right support, and they need to have adaptability at each stage. So whether your program is just getting off the ground, whether it's starting to scale, or really kind of hitting its stride at a strategic level, this crawl, walk, run framework can really help you navigate what's next and give you some clarity and confidence in doing that. So we hope that today's session gave you some new ways to think about where your program stands. If you have a program, if you're looking to put direct sourcing in place, gave you some ways to identify what you need to think about, and hopefully help you identify where the opportunities are and then how to keep your program evolving. So as always, our customer success team is here to help. So whether you need a fresh perspective, if you need help diagnosing where your program might be stuck, or even if you just want to brainstorm your next move, we'd love to connect anytime. You just let us know. So thank you again for joining, and we look forward to continuing this conversation.